Hi, everybody. Happy Thursday. I'm meteorologist Brittany Van Voorhees here with WCNC Charlotte, and welcome to Live Weather Impact. We have a lot to talk about, not only here in the Carolinas, but of course across the rest of the Atlantic Basin as we are continuing to track Hurricane Erin. Thankfully, Erin made its closest approach to the North Carolina coastline earlier today, so any impacts we have now are on the tail end of the storm. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not going to still see pretty significant impacts, like the storm surge 1 to 3 feet for most areas, maximum 5 feet, or the rip currents. That will actually linger through at least tomorrow, and the rip currents even into early Saturday. But again, the worst of everything, the worst wind, any kind of outer rain bands, a lot of that has started to taper off. So I'm going to start with Erin, but we have a lot of stuff to talk about, so just know that this it's going to be a little bit more involved probably than normal. And then we're going to speak with an expert journalist who's actually on the Outer Banks a little bit more about what they're seeing there. So let's take a first look at live pictures here. So this is a quad box showing Ocracoke. Of course, if you're unfamiliar with the Ocracoke, that's on the Outer Banks. That's one of those islands that you actually have to take a ferry to get to in order to visit. I have actually been there before. Hatteras Village, been there too. Oregon Inlet, as well as Buxton, North Carolina. So these are live videos right now, live feeds. So you can notice that there's still some overwash happening. There is still some storm surge coming on shore. And I think that Erin, while of course very impactful for these coastal communities, was a really good example for people who don't live in the Carolinas, maybe are not familiar with tropical systems, how much damage can actually be done by a storm that is still hundreds of miles away from the coast. I know this is kind of coming back to me, but I grew up in Atlanta, but lived in high school, college, as well as my second station, lived in Florida, and that station was Fort Myers. And we would be impacted with crazy waves and coastal flooding, even by a tropical storm that was a few hundred miles off the coast. And it always just seemed like other parts of the country didn't understand that those impacts could still happen, even though the storm was so far away. But it doesn't take an Ian, it doesn't take an Irma, it doesn't take a Florence, it doesn't take, those storms that kind of skirt the coast and eventually move on shore in order to see bad impact. So I think that's just a good reminder. And hopefully it's the only storm we have, I guess technically other than Chantal, that impacted the Myrtle Beach area. But hopefully these are the only two storms we have impact the Carolinas. But even if they aren't, every single storm teaches us best ways or better ways to prepare in the future. Here are current wave heights right now. We're at about 10 to 15 for some of those offshore wave heights closer to the shore, especially in South Carolina. We've already started to drop below 10 feet, so that's of course good news. As Erin continues to pull away, those conditions will continue to improve. Now again, the rip current risk is going to stay elevated. If you've ever seen this map on WCNC Charlotte or on our website, we always average. So for example, if Kill Devil Hills and Hatteras has high, but Hilton Head and Charleston are moderate, I'm still going to put high on the, overall, because it's the worst case scenario, right? So we are going to stay high through at least tomorrow. I do think some of our northern North Carolina coastal communities will still be high on Saturday. So again, that's why I'm averaging those for both those days. I just wanted to mention that because some folks starting to see yellow be mixed in. I don't expect us to be fully yellow for everyone until Sunday, Monday. And then by Monday afternoon, we'll start to filter closer to what I would consider low or pretty normal. Before we talk about our local forecast, I am just going to pop up, I was using some of these graphics in some shows and some of these graphics not in others. A reminder about some of our beach flags. So depending on which beach you are visiting, if you're going to a beach in the Carolinas, you are for sure going to see a single or a double red flag when there's some kind of serious hazard. That could be the water's completely closed with a double, or not completely closed, but there's a hazard with normal. Essentially, think red, right? We think red lights, we stop. Same idea. Now, depending on which beach you go to, yellow sometimes means you're good to go. Oftentimes it will mean also higher surf, rip currents, but not too bad. But suggestion to swim near a lifeguard still. Now again, this will depend on which beach you go to, because a lot of North Carolina beaches no longer use green, which is normally, again, green means go, right? We know that again with traffic signals. So just know that the yellow and the green can kind of mean different things if they're even there, depending on which beach you go to. Most beaches, at least in the Carolinas, specifically in North Carolina, I guess I've just been there more recently, Deb, but they actually will have those signs, kind of reminding people. And then, as always, this obviously is not an Erin issue, but dangerous marine life like sharks, jellyfish, specifically man-o'-war, that's normally when you'd see the purple. So again, just wanted to mention that very, very briefly. And after Aaron, because I know what is going to happen is that things are going to start to get crazy. We're going to start to get some models that go crazy and people are going to start sharing this. So let's just go ahead and get ahead of it. There are a few other tropical waves right now that we're watching in the Atlantic Basin. The first is this area shaded in red. That's Invest 90L. It will likely become our next named storm, but it is taking a similar trek to Aaron, if not even further out to sea. If you look kind of behind it, it looks like it's almost following in Aaron's path. That's because it's taking that same trek because of those same steering currents. Now, the good news is that one, it's a little bit further east, and two, there's so many harsh conditions now because Aaron has caused upwelling in some of these water sources, so it doesn't have the same warm ocean waters, things like that, to continue to strengthen. So all good there. Going to stay away from the United States, the area in yellow, again, not an issue, but this is one that I, again, can just see it happening now. We're going to start to get the crazy model runs over the next few weeks. And this is Invest 99L. Now, if you remember back to when we talked about Aaron, when it first formed into a tropical storm, it was 3,000 miles away from the United States. 99L is similar. It is a couple thousand miles away from the United States. If anybody tries to tell you that they know right now where 99L is going to go, maybe you don't want to call them a liar, so don't start a fight, but just know that they don't know. They have no idea. No idea. Not only can you see a pretty substantial model split, and this is just the next 5 days, but also it is way too early to know. At this point, we know that the storm has a medium chance of development, and there is a cluster that's trying to form into a tropical storm, but again, it is way, way, way too early to know. I would not be scared. I would not be concerned at this point, but what I would be aware of, is that we are starting to get into the peak of hurricane season. The historical peak is September 10th, but if you were with us last night, we talked about this a little bit, but August 20th, which was yesterday, through October 10th are historically the most active 7 weeks of hurricane season. So again, just think it's that time of the year, that time within hurricane season. Okay, satellite and radar closer to home. We are tracking some storms up in the mountains and foothills. And if you were with us last night, we were talking about this because of this cold front that's starting to at least try to push through the Charlotte area. Now, right now, the biggest cluster of storms is actually south of this front. Ahead of the main frontal boundary, there's a little trough, and you can see a lot of action happening right now southwest of us. So Greenville, Spartanburg, Greenwood, South Carolina, Anderson, Newberry, all of those areas seeing a lot of heavy rain. Now, here in the Charlotte area, nothing. And this trend does look to continue through most of the evening. So I mentioned this during our newscast, but I'm not concerned about the Panthers game right now. If anything changes, if we have a pop-up storm, we'll be the first to let you know. But just know there is at least a chance, especially if you live west of I-77 and in the mountains and foothills, that you could see some isolated rain and storms tonight. Now, tomorrow morning, it's more widespread. We'll have light to moderate rain. I don't think everybody sees it, but it's certainly going to be cloudier, cooler, and rainier to start the day. It won't rain all day, but we'll have a rinse-repeat kind of rainy start and then drier middle part of the day on Saturday morning. So the cold front that's moving through now is really not fully moving through. It's going to stall and bring us those cloudy and rainier conditions, but a second front coming next week. And what's going to happen? The best weather that we have had in months. We will have lower dew points in the 40s and 50s, which means drier air, little to no rain, and cooler temperatures. Now, if you're a summer lover, you might be looking at this and thinking, ew, disgusting. But it's not disgusting, because when the average is 88 and you're talking cooler than average, that just means anything below 88 degrees, which means this time next week, Jeb, I hope you celebrate with me. Sunny, low 80s, lows in the low 60s, and even a few mornings in the upper 50s. If that doesn't get you excited for next week, I truthfully don't know what will.
Beautiful first week of school.
Oh my goodness. I know CMS, they go back to school and it's normal, 88, which is our normal high. And then it's boom, middle part of the week, they're probably going to recess, getting a break from all the stuff that the teachers are throwing at them. And the teachers, the students, everybody is so happy. And I can give you even better news is that drier air, that cooler air does look to stick around for at least the last few days of August through August 31st. So a very, very different story, because at the end of July, we were talking about 20 plus days of 90 plus. But here we are looking at the end of August. It's hard to believe we're almost to the end of August in general, but the weather is going to be fantastic.